So we're going to create a brand new project from scratch, and we're just going to start by creating a new project folder. And in our case, we're going to call it Calc Framework because the last application that you guys built was a calculator application. And now we're going to build a framework that is going to allow us to build a calculator application. But it's way more than just a framework. I mean, it's way more than just an application. So it's an entire framework, and the purpose, remember, is for the purposes of training. So if I go new folder, and we'll just call it Calc Framework. Okay. And actually what you should probably do is log into your GitHub account. And you're going to create a new repository in there as well for the same name. Maybe that might be a better place to start. Let me sign into my GitHub account. So make sure everybody is signed. If you want to follow along, again, this is totally up to you. And you can sign into your personal GitHub. If you want, this could be something you use to develop professionally, and you can keep this for your own reference. I'll give you a minute here. The authentication, two-factor authentication. Okay, there we go. All right. So now you should be able to create a new repository and call it Calc Framework. And once you've created the repository, then you should be able to clone it. And once you clone it locally, wherever you're going to clone it in your project space, I am not going to create a GitHub repository just for this project. But basically, you'll create a new folder or clone to wherever you keep your projects. And in my case, I'm on Windows, so I'm going to cd into my my new folder, my new project folder, Calc Framework. And if you're on Mac or Linux, you'll do ls. Windows, so dir. It's an empty folder. Okay, so once you've done that, and Peter, it looks like I see your desktop. You should have a project. Now we're going to npm install. So you've got, Peter, you've got your screen shared. That's the old calc project. So you're going to want a whole new project space.
Yeah, but I can build on top of this, right?
No, absolutely not. No, unless you wiped out everything. You probably want to keep this as a reference, and you want a whole new project space, because now the application we're going to be building is much more enterprisey, and yeah, it's going to be a completely different ball game.
Okay.
So I'd make a whole new project space. Okay, so once we've done that, then we do just do npm init, and this is going to be the beginning. So the package name, it picked it up from the folder name, so Calc Framework. I'm just going to press enter, yes. And I usually start my version by saying 0.0.1. Description is a paper framework training Okay, that's fine. Entry point, we'll say index.js is fine for now. We're probably going to change that. Test command is empty. We can leave that. Git repository is empty. Keywords, framework, training, probably irrelevant. Author, make sure you put your full name. It's a matter of signing. License, we can leave that. I usually put MIT, I guess. It doesn't matter, whatever. And then it's generating this package.json for us. So we'll just click yes. That's going to be perfectly fine because we're going to manage that ourselves. Okay, so now that I've made the beginnings of what we're going to build for this, there's the package.json. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in Atom. I'm going to use Atom. I think somebody, you guys were using VS Code before. It doesn't matter which one or the other you use. I just prefer to use Atom. Open folder, and I'm going to open this calc framework. Okay, so there is our calc framework folder, and package.json, that's auto-generated. All right, perfect. Now there's a few things we need to do here to really get it up and going. We've got our the application name, version, and description. The main, that's going to change here very quickly. We do need to have a start command for now. We'll create a start command, and Babel-node, we're going to have to install some dependencies here. Babel node src main.js. So we're going to create a folder structure here, and that's going to be part of that. Repository, we don't need keywords. Okay, author. I'm just going down the list here, license, and all right. Then the rest of it is these dependencies. So we do need to install, let's see here, npm install at Babel. And this is similar to what Peter and Hannah, what you guys had done before when we built the the calculator application. Is we did need the same dependencies, be Babel CLI. And did I spell that correctly? npm at Babel core. Oops. Okay, we've got a problem in our JSON in here. This is why I need to make sure I have a comma there. Okay. Let's try that again. There it goes. Okay. Core, Babel core, and npm I at Babel node. Okay, npm I at Babel preset env. And npm I at okay, that's actually the last of it. Oh, there's a there is a dependency we're going to need for now. I've actually removed it in later versions, but we can put it in here just for now. And I think it's giving a vulnerability problem, but I mean, like I said, I removed it in later versions of the training. So we'll go ahead and install it for now. npm I at it's not at prompt sync, so that we can actually prompt the user. And like I said, the later version, I've actually implemented a solution that works around that. Oh, Hannah, what did you say? Okay. Oh, did I drop? Oh, hold on. Okay. So, yeah. So that way you can follow along, and we can manage it. You can build out this framework and see exactly what it is that you're doing, and you can ask questions. So share your screen if you like, and if you want to ask any questions. So I've installed these dependencies, and now let's go ahead and start making some project. Get the project going. So I'm going to make a new folder called src for source, and I'm going to make another one for test. And the purpose of having separate ones is so that we can, this is going to be a framework. So under source, we're going to build the framework. Under test, we're going to build a test harness application that will use that framework. So that's why I've created this test folder like this. All right, so we do need a couple other files. We need a .getignore file. And this, from the perspective of your GitHub account, this is going to allow you to ignore certain files from getting picked up when you do a git add from the command line. So it's a .babelrc, and I put it in my source file. I don't want it there. I want it to be in the root of my project. And the babelrc file, that's going to contain, it's going to look like this. So it's just presets, Babel, preset environment, and it just does it. It's one of these settings we have to have. I'm going to make another folder for getignore, .getignore. Okay, and this is the one that's going to allow us to ignore things we don't want to get picked up and added to our GitHub repository. These are like auto-generated files. For instance, we might, well, the most important one is this node modules folder. That contains all the binaries for all the dependencies and all their dependencies and all their dependencies and second, third, fourth, fifth tier dependencies, and we don't necessarily need to have all of that in our repository. So we want to ignore this folder. So what we do is we have a star / node modules / star. So we want to ignore that. Node modules / star. And we also want to ignore, there's other stuff I'm going to be adding later on. So I'm sort of preemptively removing them from, or ignoring them. Star / bin for binary, bin / star .env, because we're eventually going to have an environment file. Star.log, we'll just leave the log files off because we're going to be generating those at some point. There's a whole bunch of stuff, and there'll be more. Like, there's going to be more. There's documentation and HTML files that we don't necessarily want to get updated every time. But those are the main things. Okay, so now we've got a source, we've got our test. Let's go ahead and start to fill those out. Under source, we're going to put a new file and call it main.js. And that's going to be our main entry point, basically, for the framework. Okay. And back here in my package.json, I need to make sure that I've updated this main here. So there ./src main.js. Okay. So now I've pointed it to where I'm going to close these other files. We don't need those anymore. So now we pointed this to our main.js, and anytime we start a new file, there's the first thing we need to do, and that's write a header for the file. And again, I'm going to be sort of walking you through this as a matter of let's follow best practice from our coding standards. So if you follow along, try your best not to get lazy, because we want to make sure that we're following these good practices. So from this, I do a /**, press enter, and I get the beginnings of a header. All right, so do @file, and it's main.js. Okay, @module, and it's main, and @description. And these headers, they're going to get tiresome, but the faster the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. It also helps with your typing. And if you need help with typing classes, there's some tools I could recommend to help you type faster. But just try your best to keep up. Okay. Contains all customer facing functions that are used to interface with the rest of the application framework. Okay. @requires module warden. And this is going to be, now let me describe this. So main is going to be our front-facing interface. Now we're going to have an inward facing, in towards the main.js is the outward facing framework interface. There's going to be an inward facing main, which is, we're going to call it warden. Now we could change the name. You could call it emperor or king or whatever, Lord President Fauci, for all I care. It doesn't matter. I called it warden. That's a good naming system that I had, and if we want to change, we can always change, and it's your framework. You can change it however you want. Okay, and then at requires, and we do need a curly brace here. I'm going to put a link, and this is https://www.npmjs.com/package/path, and then there's a vertical pipe and its path. So we're going to be using this one all over the place. Path is really important, and then I'm going to sign my code. Author Hollingshead. Okay, and put today's date. Today is 2022-01-05, and then we need a copyright. So this is your code. Make sure you put a copyright on there. You own the copyrights, and I copied and pasted this from my other code. Let's change it to 2022, and it may be open source code, but the copyright should still reside with me. Okay, so there's a few things we're going to need here. Var path equals require path. Okay. Var base file name equals path.base name, and it's module.file name, and I'll explain what this is doing here in a minute. Path.ext name module.file name. Okay, now what that's doing is it's basically getting this file. It's getting the file name. And we're going to use that for doing all kinds of other things. Then I need to create a prefix for this, so like a namespace. So var namespace prefix equals, I'm going to use a backtick, and I'll say framework dot $ curly brace base file name. Okay, so what that's doing, I'm going to use namespaces here because it's going to allow me to control logs. So I'm going to have console logs. Maybe this might not work so much at this level because before we execute any functions in here, we haven't set up any configuration. And that's actually one of the first things we're going to do once we get past this initialization of the project space. So let's keep going, and we're going to start to see how this comes together. It's going to take some time to build out all the infrastructure that we're going to need to be able to utilize all of this stuff. But it is important, and you'll see how it works later. All right, so the main function we're going to need is this function init framework. Okay, and that's going to take a client configuration, and I'll put a there. And now again, we've started a new function. So very first thing after we create the actual function signature, which is the inputs, the function name, the declaration of the function itself, then we need to create the header for that. So we want to make sure we do this first, actually create the template or the signature of the function, because once we go this / and press enter, it's going to use this to create that header. And so if I have 3, 4, 5 inputs, parameter inputs to this function, then it'll automatically pick it up and put it into this header, which is really cool. So if I do that, there you can see it already has the parameter there. It has a return, and now I can fill out the rest of this template. Okay, so at function init framework, at description, it initializes the framework systems. Okay, and then this parameter is going to be an object, and we're going to talk a little bit more about data structures later, and we'll start to see like what that is when we go to actually. We're going to need to build out the test harness to be able to actually call this and use it. Okay, so this client configuration, I need a description for this parameter, is a configuration data object that contains, let me go to a new line, all the data needed to bootstrap the framework for a client application. Okay, and return, in this case, make sure we get our types in here, is void, and make sure to sign it, so put your name in here, author, Hollingshead, take ownership of your code, date 2022 0105. Okay, and now there's a few things that we have to do for every function. This is sort of like creating a boilerplate, and once we create a few of these, they'll start to go a little bit faster, and you'll start to get a feel for it. And then you can actually copy paste them and then just refactor as you, so it makes it a little bit quicker instead of always creating a boilerplate function and doing all of this stuff from scratch. So a couple things we're going to need right away is let function name equals init framework dot name. Okay, we're going to, again, later on we'll be using this to actually drive console logs, and it'll be driven by a configuration system. We'll build out all those subsystems that'll support all of that. But we're not there yet, so we kind of have to hard code for right now. So console.log, and I could do this with a backtick, but I think I'm going to just do it with a regular begin. Well, maybe not. Maybe I will do the backtick. Backtick, begin, so it's all inline. $ curly brace, namespace prefix, and we should actually have a dot right here. This should be a dot, because I don't want to have my dot being inline. Then we'll have another $ curly brace, function name. All right, so for those, and then put, oops, this needs to say function right here, space function. The main point of this backtick is I can actually declare a variable inside my string, and that's what this $ curly brace is. Now I'm using this variable from this namespace prefix up here on line 14. I'm using that in line in this string, and then I'm doing this function name, which is coming from right there, of course. So I've got that in place, and we need to log every time we're going to have a function, we're always going to log the beginning of the function and the end of the function, and any outputs of the function. So if I return anything, in this case I'm returning void, so there's nothing being returned, but any inputs to the function as well. I'm just going to copy paste this, put it right here, and this should say client configuration is :space, and then I'm going to do a $ curly brace JSON.stringify. Oops, let's get rid of all of this junk. Stringify client configuration. Now the reason why we need that is because this client configuration that we passed in is an object. It's a complex object, and so we need to convert it into a string so that it can actually get output to the actual console log. All right, so I've got that. Yes. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna have to drop. A new meeting just came up for me in 15 minutes, so I'm gonna have to drop a little early here.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, feel free to get caught up later, or
Will do.
Whatever you want. You could get caught up later.
It looks great, brother.
All right, thank you. Take care. All right, so let's keep going here. there's some stuff that we have to do before we do anything else. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is where we actually have the body of the function now, between this begin and end, but after we've declared the inputs to the function. All right, so we also need a module.exports equals curly brace here, a semicolon at the end, and I'm going to put a square bracket and a single quote, and we'll say the name of the function, which is init framework. So we'll drop that right here, and all of this will change. Like there's like a lot of hard-coded stuff in here, and I don't like writing hard-coded strings in my code, but we don't have the infrastructure in place to be able to replace all of this stuff. So yeah, we can't do that. But I do need to have this client configuration here and an arrow function to the init framework, and client configuration has to go there as well. So for Hannah and Peter, you guys remember we had an arrow function. I'm just going to do a quick rehash here. This arrow is essentially another function. You don't see it. It's an inline function, and I didn't write the word function, but it is. It is a function. So it's taking this input and it's mapping it to this actual function, which is this function right here. So it's calling that function. That's what this arrow is actually doing. It's JavaScript syntax for a function. So it's kind of weird how it does that, but if you don't understand how JavaScript and arrow functions work, that'd be something you need to read up on elsewhere. But it is happening. So this does pass that to call another function, which is this function right up here. And that's how we're going to interface to this function. Okay. So a couple other things we'll need to do after we do that is set up additional folder structures. So let's go ahead and do that before I go too much further into this init framework. So this is where we're going to actually start to build out the rest of the framework. There's a number of folders we're going to need. First one is a folder called brokers. Now, brokers are going to be like what you would think a broker does. A broker is a go-between, a middleman, is a middle management, is the little guy in between that runs the in-between show. So we'll have a brokers, and we're going to need another folder here called controllers. And these are going to be our master controllers for the framework. We need another folder here called Exutrix, E-X-E-C-U-T-R-I-X. Exutrix is a term that means female executor of an estate. I use it in this term to indicate that this is going to be where I hold my low-level execution code. So I just put that there. Another folder we're going to need is resources. Okay, and another one is structures. And primarily it's going to be data structures. We don't need to say data structures, so we'll just say structures. Okay, and then under test, let's go back over to test. We're going to need a folder here for resources again. So we'll see that under test. And then under test, also, we can go ahead and create a new file, and we're going to call it test-harness.js. Okay, and so let's go work on writing out that test harness, because that's going to be the beginning of where we actually build out the rest of our application. Yeah, let me go back. Okay, so test harness, and when we start a new file, first thing we do is / and create a header. So at file test harness.js at module. It would help if I could spell test harness. Description. This is the main init for the test harness application. Okay. It contains just enough of the main program loop and or basic argument parsing to effectively test the framework. Okay. And then we're going to need some dependencies here. At requires curly brace link, at link, sorry, https://www.npmjs.com/package/prompt-sync, and then vertical pipe prompt-sync. And that's that dependency we talked about. Now, for the next one, I'm just going to switch back over to main, and I'll copy this requires link for the path, and I'll paste it right there. Assign it, author, okay, date it, 2022, 01/05, and we need our copyright, which I'll copy from over here. So copy the copyright over there. Okay, and then we import, well, technically we're going to import calc framework from the location of our framework, src main.js. Okay, and const prompt equals require prompt sync, which I can just copy from here. Okay, prompt sync. And when we call prompt sync like that, we need additional open close parenthesis. It has to initialize it as an object, something how it does it. And I'll say var path equals require path. Okay. And then we need to do a few things. We need a root path, so we'll say global.app root equals path.resolve, and we're going to say process.cwd. Okay, so that's going to get our root path, and it's going to save it in a local environment variable for this application. Var root path, I'm going to actually create it like this, so it's in a local variable as well. Initialize it to an empty string, and then we have the rest of what we did in main.js, which is these two lines right here. Just copy them, paste them over here, and there's one minor thing we have to do, and that's remove this framework dot. We don't need that. We do need this dot at the end, so we'll leave that there. Okay, so now that we've actually set all of that up, before we do anything else, we need to actually run everything. So / I'm going to make a comment here. I'm going to say launch the test harness application. Okay, and we'll say var program running equals false. Bootstrap application, and program running equals true, and then application. So this is sort of what we do to, this is the main part of the application. This is the execution of the application itself. But now we need to go create the rest of it. So function bootstrap application. And it doesn't take any inputs. There we go. And we need to create a header again. So / at function bootstrap application at description. Set up all the test harness application data and configuration settings. Okay, and we're going to do a whole lot of that stuff, once we get to the point where we've got the infrastructure to be able to do it. And we don't have any of that right now, so we just have to sort of get by. There's return void, author, signage. Let's get used to that. At date 2022, 01, 05, and okay, yeah, that's it. Okay, so from here, root. Oops, should be root path. I'm sorry, this up here needs to be root path. Yeah, we need to be referencing that. Root path equals path.resolve. Path.resolve basically resolves the path on your local system when it's actually executing. So if I was to write this application here and then run it on my Android, path.resolve will resolve the path on my Android phone. If I run it from a Mac, or even if I run it from here on my Windows box, it's going to resolve that path, whatever it is that I pass to the input to this function, it's going to resolve it on my local system. In this case, process.cwd, okay, and let app config equals. Now, this is the beginning of a little bit of a data structure lesson for you. So there's some data that we need to pass to that init framework. So you saw it here was this object. If I come back to that main, there's this object as the client configuration. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a configuration object. This is that complex object, and I'm going to pass it when I call main.init framework. So what I say here is these are some stuff that I need to bootstrap the framework at some point. So application name, and we'll call it, well, the name of it is technically the test harness. Okay, and root path is the root path variable. And we need a config reference path. So app config reference. Whoops. I keep typing wrong. Reference path. In this case, it is / because I need to escape the / test / resources / configuration. Now we haven't created that folder yet, but we're about to. I need to add another double / at the end. Okay, and then I can call calc framework.init framework, and I'll pass it the app config object that I just created on this set of lines up above. All right, so now that I've passed that, let's go ahead and finish creating our folders. Resources, and we need, under resources, we need another folder called configuration. Okay, and under configuration, we need one more, a new file. This one is application.system.json. Okay, and then in here, I'm going to put a curly brace, create a new object, and I'll say app setting : trunk monkey. Okay, and I'm doing this because this is the test application. This is the test harness, and I want to make sure that I can get my trunk monkey setting, this configuration setting, application configuration setting, loaded into my framework once we get to the point where we can actually do that. So I'm just, there's going to be other stuff that we're going to add here eventually that's specific to the test harness itself. But we don't really need all of that right now. So there's that. Everybody's still online. Did I drop again? Okay, good. Okay. All right, so now there's additional things we need. Let's see here. I think now that we've got we've got to go back to the test harness. We've actually need to create the application. This is the bootstrap for the application for the framework, but it's not the application itself. This does all that setup that we're going to have to do. So we're going to load all this. This is the config object, which has this config reference path, which is then going to load our configuration data before we actually get to the point where we're even executing the application. So all of that stuff is like preemptive loading or preloading before we get to the point where we're even executing the application. You'll see once we get further along. Okay, so but we do need to have the application itself. So function application. It doesn't take any inputs. Curly brace, semicolon, and / ****. Let's write our function again. And at function, it's an application is the name of the function. And description. This is the main program loop, the init for the test harness application. So whatever application it is, this is it. Okay, it's going to return void and doesn't have any description because it's void. At author, sign it. Again, take ownership of your code, date it, 2022-01-05. Okay, and let function name equal application dot name. Okay, and we didn't do that up here in this bootstrap. Probably should, or maybe we will later. We'll come back to it. This is that's fine. Console.log backtick. You know what? We can copy paste this out of here. Just copy paste the whole thing from the begin to the end and drop it right into there. Okay, we don't need this one because we don't have any data for that. All right, so there's some stuff now for the body of this function we're going to need. And we might not use it right now, but we'll use it later. Argument-driven interface equals false. Let command input. And for Peter or Hannah, this, you remember, you're going to notice that there's a lot of similarities between what we're doing right now and what we had done before with your first calculator application. Let command result if argument driven interface equals false. Okay, console.log begin main program loop. Okay, and then console.log begin command parser. That should be lowercase p. Okay, we don't have a command parser yet, and it's going to be a while before we actually have one, but I'll put it in here anyways. Okay, and then we're going to have a while loop. While program running equals true. There we go. Command input equals prompt. Okay, like that. And I'm going to prompt the user for some input, just like as if we were writing our own version of DOS. Okay, and down here I'll say if command input dot to uppercase equals exit. And this is very similar to what we had, Peter. Peter and Hannah, this you had seen. This is exactly what we are, very similar to what we had. console.log end command parser, and program running equals false. So this is going to kill that while loop. As soon as we're done executing this, it's going to finish off. Console.log and main program loop, and console.log exiting test harness application. Okay, so, and then we have to break, which is going to break out, and this while loop is basically done. So that's our application. All it is going to do right now would be to process an exit command, which is all kind of hard coded. I don't really like this, but we don't have any other infrastructure. So this is how we have to start. We have to start from bare bones, beginning. There's nothing else here. This is how we begin. Probably should go ahead and do this. I'm going to copy paste this begin and put it right up here in the end. I'll put that in here as well. And let's go ahead and have this function name. You can put that in here as well, just so we're following protocol. And I have to change that from application to bootstrap application because it's the name of the function. And everything else should be falling in line. Yes, it is. Okay. Now I'm actually calling this. So this should pass this data along to main.js. But we're not doing anything with it here other than it should stringify it. But now that I have some stuff in place, I can actually go back to my package.json and I can write a test for this. So I can, instead of having an empty test, test echo blah 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 here, I can do test babel-node dot /test harness.js. Okay, so now I should actually be able to go into my repo and say, let me clear that, npm test. There it is. So now, yeah, it's working. I got a begin test harness bootstrap application function, begin framework.main init framework. So it got into my main. There's the client configuration. There's the app name, the test harness, the root path. There's the root path, the app config reference path, and there's my object. So that came through. End framework.main init framework. Okay, so that function ended. End test harness bootstrap application. So the bootstrap application function is done. Begin test harness.application. Begin main program loop and begin command parser. And there's my prompt. So I'm prompting for myself. So I should actually be able to type Q, and it doesn't do anything. I should be able to now type exit, all lowercase, and it should exit. There it is. End command parser, end main program loop, exiting test harness application, and end test harness.application function. So yeah, it's all working. That's the beginning. We've actually started what we need to start. Now we're ready to actually fill out the rest of this. So brokers, controllers, exutrix, resources, structures, and start to build out the infrastructure that we're going to need. We still got some time, so I guess we'll just keep plugging away here. All right. I guess the main thing, first thing we're going to need is under controllers, we need our warden, because I mentioned that one. So we're going to need a new file, warden.js. Okay. And anytime we have a new file, of course, let's create a header for it. // and at file warden.js at module warden at description contains all the functions to manage the entire application framework at the highest level. Okay, highest level also provides an interface to easily manage all the framework features and various functionality from a single entry point. All right. Now there'll be some dependencies we're going to need. That requires module chief configuration, which is another module we're going to be creating soon. Configuration, and then the rest of this can come out of main. So the copyright, the date, my name, and the path. I'll just paste all of that right there. Everything else is the same. It works just fine. Okay, var chief configuration equals require dot / chief configuration. And then the rest of this can come out of main as well, which is these 3 lines of code. Okay, so we got our path, base file name, that's all the same. Now instead of framework, we need to change this to controllers because we're in the controllers folder. And the base file name should be warden.js, so that's not going to change. All right, and then we say function process root path config data. Oh, looks like Matt joined the other one. Let me redirect him over here. Hey, Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hey, Seth.
Hey.
Yep.
Yeah, we're over in the co-screen, and the invite should be in there.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. That's fine. I saw you join, and so I figured I'd jump on here real quick and let you know that we're over there.
No, I appreciate that. Let me get over on Go Screen.
And we're making real good progress. Things are already coming together.
Nice.
So.
Install.
All right, I'll see you over there.
I'll rip through this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, so he said he'll join in a little bit. All right.
Hey, Seth, I just wanted to say, just wanted to make sure we shouldn't be using vars. We should really be using lets or consts anytime we're using JavaScript.
I do.
Yep.
I do. Any place that's not global, var is supposed to be global, so I left it as var because it's global. But you're right. I mean, any place else, I always use let, and you're going to see that.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's really good practice, just to get that standard going. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean okay. That you're absolutely right. I mean, even as a global, if it's declared here, it'll have global scope. So that's absolutely true. You could make that as a practice here and put all these as lets. The difference being, var will be global and let is just going to be scoped to where it is. In this case, it's global. So, but you're right. These should be lets. It's a good call out. I might still declare them as var, but yeah, they should probably be let. You can see I was using let in my inside of the functions. Okay, so process root path. This is the config data. That's that data that we're going to use. And there we go. Let's create a header for this. At function process root path at description. Oops. Processes the root path of the application using business rules. Now, we don't have a business rules system at all. Like we haven't even, hold on. Oh, Matt pinged here. Let's see here. No, there should be a download. Okay. Let's see here. Download co-screen. Copy link. Let me paste that over to him real quick. All right. Yeah. Process. We don't have any business rules at all. Okay. Add note. I'm going to add a note here because of that by calling path.resolve __ dir name. This does not return the true root path of the application. It returns the path to the currently executing file or the file that was executed first, which is, in my case, C:// it's going to be, well, test, but in this case, this is an example, because I can create another test application. This is the test harness application, but I can create another application that's using this same framework, and it's going to report that path. And so I'm going to say calculator2 / application calculator2. So if I had another application and that was the path, that is what would be executed. But what we really need for the root path is just C:/ calculator. Oh, okay. All right. Oh, he already dropped. Okay. That's fine. Calculator2 / Okay, config data. So this is an object again. It's a complex object. Config data. All of the configuration data that should be parsed as part of the setup process. Okay, in this case, what are we going to return? We're going to return a string. Oops. And the true root path of the application. Assign it. And date it. Okay. And I think we can copy paste again everything from this init framework. We're going to drop it right in here. Oh, okay. Let me invite him again. Okay. Yes, I did. All right, so we need to change this. Process root path needs to be this right here. So I got to change that for sure. This config data needs to be updated on this one and this one. Okay. And oh, it looks like a Pete. Oh, there you are, Matt. Hey, welcome. Okay, so we're just continuing to write some functions here. I've just started. I mean, I only created a few files, but we did npm init, and we're going through the code here. So feel free to get caught up. And then now that this body of the function, I'm going to have put a comment here, ampersand all the way across. The reason why I'm doing this is because this is supposed to be a business rules system, but we don't have any business rules at all. And it's going to take some serious time to be able to build up the business rules infrastructure. And since we don't have that and we need to process the root path, we're going to just go ahead and have to do it manually. And hard code it right into this function. Later, this function will still be here, but it's just going to call a business rule to do the same thing. Oh, there's Kip. I have to drop as well. I have to tend to my daughter. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we do need to put this in here. Yep. All right. I'm going to say let application name equal config data, and I'm going to call this application name, and let path to process equal config data. So I'm adding some stuff to that config data, root path, and let resolved path equal like that. Let path elements equal path to process dot split, and double backslash, and console dot log. Backtick path elements is $ curly brace JSON.stringify path elements. Okay, so that way I can console log it, and then I need to define. I'm going to say loop 1. So I've created a label, and for let I equal 0, I less than path elements dot length I plus plus. Okay, so let path element equal path elements I, and there might be a more efficient way of doing this, but that's okay. I'm not too concerned about efficiency right now. I just want to get something up and working, and I know that this works. Resolved path equals path element. Okay. Else if path element equals application name, resolved, did I spell that right? Resolved path equals resolved path plus double backslash plus path element plus double backslash again, break loop 1, and here we're going to have an else. Resolved path equals resolved path plus double backslash plus path element. Okay, I think that is it. I'm just double checking my code. Okay. There's maybe some other implementation that could simplify that a little bit. That's okay. All right, so then we say let root path equal path dot resolved path. So we do need to have this console.log root path is $ curly brace root path. And then we've got our end, and then after the end we need to say return root path. Okay, there we go. Alright, so that should solve that problem. That we're actually going to resolve this path properly. So from there, we should be able to actually start loading stuff. And in fact, that's the next function. So, and there's only really two functions at this point in this function, in this stage of building this framework. So function init framework schema config data and semicolon, and we need to do our header as usual at function init framework schema. Description is set up all of the framework data and configuration settings. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff, because really all of it has to flow through here. Why didn't it pull that parameter? That's strange. At param. Oh, I see why. This needs to be function. Okay, let's try that one more time. I'm going to just copy this. There we go. Paste. Okay. Yep, now we can do this. All right. Config data is an object. It's a complex object. And the description for it is all of the configuration data that should be parsed as part of the setup process. Okay. And return is void. Sign it. And date it. 2022 0105. Okay. And then we basically need all of this same stuff, boilerplate right out of there. Drop it in here. Okay. Init framework schema. That has to change to there. Begin function. This, instead of client configuration, it's config data. So we're going to paste that right over there and paste it right here. Okay. And then we've got our end. So perfect. Yeah, that's what we need. Now the body of the function, let app config path equal config data, and we're this app config path, and let framework config path equal config data, and here we say framework config path. Okay, and then we call chiefConfiguration.setup configuration. We're going to pass it app config path, and we're going to pass it framework config path. Okay, so what do we do here? Let me just sort of walk you through it. Config data is going to have all the data that was passed in by the test harness, which right here, if I go to the Bootstrap application, this is that config data. So I'm in the calc framework.init framework, I'm passing this config data object, which is this complex thing. Now if I go to main and look at that, the init framework, there's that configuration data, there it is. So in here, I'm actually going to call this warden function init framework schema. Okay, so, and it's going to pass that config data, the same thing. So here's that config data, and now I'm deconstructing that config data, and I'm pulling a data object out of it called app config path, and another one, framework config path. So I've got these two paths for the app config path and the framework config path. Now those are just paths, and I'm going to pass them to this setup configuration. So that's what's going down here. Now I haven't created any of this chief configuration stuff yet. That's going to be in controllers, and we'll create that file in a little minute. But it gives you an idea what's going to be happening. Now we probably should go back and let me double check, make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay. Well, I need to export this. So let's go module.exports equals curly brace, and let's put a semicolon there. And we need to export this process root path, colon, config data, and then we've got our arrow function again, which I mentioned earlier, how that works. Process root path, config data, we're passing that along, and same as what we did before, Peter. You remember this, module exports, what we did with our math calculator application before.
Right.
Init framework schema, we just export these guys. You got it, there we go. Config data, arrow function, and init framework schema. Okay, config data here. It's all the same. There we go. Okay, so now I've exported those. I should be able to go back to my main and actually fill out the body of this thing, which I never did. I started it, but I didn't really get very far. Okay, so first things first, let's say let app root path equals warden dot process root path, and I'm passing it the client configuration. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay, client configuration, and I'm going to start adding some stuff here. App root path. Yeah, and see, you notice if I go back to this warden, we haven't actually created these things yet, and now that's why I'm doing it right here. I'm creating them in line at this point. Okay, so we say app root here equals app root path and client configuration. Let's see, that was app root path. This should say app config path equals app root path plus client configuration app config reference path. So I'm sort of combining paths in line. And client configuration, this is framework config path equals double underscore dir name plus / resources / configuration / double slash. We need this one too to be escaped. All right. And then we call warden.init framework schema and pass it that client configuration. Okay, so now all of that should be wired up. We come back to warden, and the only thing we're missing now is the next piece, which is this setup configuration. And this is going to carry on for a while because there's a lot of pieces we have to set up. Like, okay, so I'll just go ahead and create the next file is chiefConfiguration.js. Before I go too much further into there, I want to double check. I've created it up here, so we've got that as that dependency. But let me go to main. I want to double check I did not. So in our main, I didn't do it because we didn't have it at the time, but we do need let warden equal require / controllers / warden.js. Okay. And I did have that as this. It's up here, so that's good. But now I've got my chief configuration, and you can already get a sense, like from the folder structure and all the files that we're creating, this is much, much, much more enterprisey than your previous calculator application, right, Peter? File, chiefConfiguration.js at module chiefConfiguration at description contains all the functions to manage the configuration system, such as adding, setup, parsing, and processing. Okay, that requires, and what is it going to require? It's going to require a module that we're going to call configurator. That requires, the rest of this can actually copy paste from over here. So the copyright all the way up to the path. Just paste that right there. And down we go. So let chief data. Oh yes, we do need the chief data as well. I forgot about that. That requires module data. Oh, chief data. Sorry, this is. And actually, I should put this ahead of the other one because it's a controller and not a low-level executor. Okay, chief data is the next level we'll need past the chief configuration. And that equals require dot / chief data. Okay, and var, oops, we'll say let configurator require. We haven't created this one either, but we're definitely going to have to. Exutrix configurator. And Matt, you missed it earlier. I mentioned exutrix is a term that means female executor of an estate. In this case, I'm using the term to mean low-level execution code. So chief configurator, and then the rest of this can copy paste out of here from path down. So that will go right there. And function setup configuration. Come on, there you go. App config path and framework config path. Okay, write the header. At function setup configuration at description sets up all of the application and framework configuration data. Okay. And oops. All right, now parameters. Okay, app config path. This is going to be a string. And the description of that parameter is the path of the configuration files for the application layer. Okay, and this one is also a string. This is the path of the configuration files for the framework layer. Return is void. And sign it. Put your author here. Author at date. Okay, and then we need to copy paste the rest of this stuff from, may as well just do it from here, I suppose. Just copy paste the body of that, and we'll put it here and gut the function. Take all the guts out, and we'll just leave it like that. Now this has to change because that's the function name. paste that there. Uh-oh, I see a problem. We can't have the function on the end of this. That has to come off. Make sure I didn't miss that anywhere else. Yeah, I did. Okay, clean that up. And how about here? Yep, that one too. Let's take that out. Okay, yeah, I think we're good there. Good there. That one's good. And coming back over here, this one's got to come out. Okay. All right. I'm going to copy paste that line because we have two parameters coming into this function. I want to make sure we log both of them. Okay, so app config path right there and right here. Framework config path right there and right there. Okay, so there's our begin and end. And this got updated, correct? Okay. All right. Now we need configurator.set configuration. Oops, that's setup. No, I don't want to set up. I want to set configuration setting. And we're going to pass it the app config path. And we're going to pass it the app config path. Okay, so I'm passing it the name app config path as well as the actual app config path variable. Configurator.set configuration setting. This is framework config path. Framework config path, and that's going to actually set them on the actual config. We don't have the configurator. If I expand the Xutrix, we haven't created the configurator file, so there's nothing there yet. And I'll say let all app config data equals to empty curly brace. We're going to create an empty object here. Let all framework config data equal empty object as again. Okay, now we'll say all framework config data equals chief data dot setup all JSON config data. And we'll pass it a couple things here. Framework config path. And I'm going to pass it configuration of configuration string. All app config data equals chief data dot setup. I'm calling the same function. Setup all JSON config data. And here I'm passing it app config path as a string, and again configuration. Oops, that should be a string. Okay. Now, I haven't implemented those functions yet. So, and we might not get to it. Oh, maybe we will. I don't know. A couple of things we do need to do. Parse loaded configuration data. And note we cannot really properly implement the parse loaded configuration data until we have a basic business rules system, which is going to take some time for us to get there. To do merge app config data and framework config data. So that is something we're going to have to work on. And what I should probably just do right here is I'll just copy paste these guys up here and drop them here. And I'll change this. So this is going to say all app config data is, and I'll change this one, all framework config data is, and we'll drop those right into here. Okay, so they're stringifying it. Up here, I could probably remove this JSON.stringify because these are strings. Oops, I do need to have the curly brace there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I've actually logged it properly, and then these are going to log. And let's see here. Now I might be able to get to this. So chief data. Let's see here. Any questions so far, Peter? How are you keeping up?
Yeah, doing fine. Just following along. If you
Okay.
can share I guess your Git repo after, or the
Yeah,
actual zip, the
yeah,
actual zip file of the project.
yeah. You can do the repo once you probably create a backup of the project of your code that you've done. Um, that's what I'd do. I'd create a clone or a copy. Copy your project folder to another folder so you don't lose your code changes, and then clone, and then you can move those changes into your actual cloned repo, and then git add and git push and all of that business.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that'll be your first commit, which is fine. You don't have to worry about branches yet because we're not that far along yet. We just have to create the initialization of this project.
Yeah, and if you could also share your zip file of this project.
Yeah, what we'll do is once we go into you know I mean, I can certainly do that, but I don't think it's quite ready to do that yet. Um, and what we can do, I mean, yeah, I might be able to do that. What I can do is, and I think this might be best approach, is for us to have some offline sessions, just between us, to make sure that you're all caught up and have everything that you need.
Okay.
So it'd be a little bit of like collaborative coding to make sure that you're caught up. Uh, and I probably, I mean, Hannah's not here, and she's had to step out for her COVID testing. So I'm probably going to have, a catch-up session with her to make sure she can follow. She's all caught up.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll probably jump on that one once you guys have that.
Yeah, so it'd probably just be the two of us jumping on another co-screen at some other point during the day tomorrow.
Okay.
That way we're sort of all synced up and ready to go, uh, and ready to take off for the next the next step.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah. So I'm gonna I need to step away as well. So
Okay. All right.
just give you the heads up there.
Yeah, I'll just what I'll do is I'll leave a to do right here and just say to do implement these functions, which I actually have it in my notes because I'm not sure if I got too much further. Yeah, I mean I did a little bit, but not much further. Yeah, so there's the beginnings of other stuff here. There's a few other things here and there, but we've actually made pretty good progress getting started. So, I mean, given the fact that we're just starting the project and there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more files we'd have to make, and actually that's the end of training 1. So it's moving right along.
True.
All right. Yeah, let's level set again tomorrow. We'll make sure we have everything. We'll have to find some time. Let's see. I think I've got